Good afternoon. Hi, just getting the little bit of background sorted out there. Hello, my name is Joanne Drum, and I'm with the Education Department of the National Gallery of Ireland. I'm sure many of you have been on these talks before and heard me do this introduction, but I am delighted to be here today to welcome Mari Lynch, who's going to be speaking about our upcoming exhibition, Tales from the Archives, which is in our room 11. Now, many of you know this space. It's kind of the corridor space between the Millennium Wing and the gallery's atrium. And that is what our Centre for the Study of Irish Art use for their showcase exhibitions. They really explore different aspects of the incredibly deep collections that we have in the archive. And before we get started, I'd just like to do a little bit of housekeeping. We can't see you and we can't hear you. Feel free to have your cup of tea or whatever you'd like to do while you're watching this, because it's a webinar format. And because it's a webinar format, we would love to have your questions, but if you can fill those in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, I will pop up when Mari is finished speaking and I will bring up your questions with her. If I could ask you politely not to put anything in the chat box, that would be greatly appreciated. It's because that pops up on the screen in front of the speaker and can just be a bit distracting, where the Q&A box works away in the background. So if you have any questions because of that, you can ask me during the session if there's any technical questions. But anything for Mari, just pop them in and I'll come back. Mari, you're very welcome. We're thrilled to have you. I'm going to put a spotlight on you too, because at the moment you're tiny. There we go. And if you'd like to share your presentation, we'll get going and I will pop back up at the end. I'm also going to mention a couple of other events that we have with this exhibition. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Joanne. I'll go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, so hopefully you can all see this screen. I'm delighted to be talking today about our new exhibition, Creator na Cartlin, Tales from the Archive, which opens on Thursday of this week. So we are installing at the moment and it's looking absolutely beautiful. So this exhibition explores the Irish artist's relationship with animals as a source of joy, humour, awe, inspiration and companionship. So the exhibition is drawn entirely from our Irish art archives, which are held in the Centre for the Study of Irish Art at the National Gallery of Ireland. The exhibition, as we'll see in this exhibition, artists' archives are alive with depictions of the animal world. Hidden between the pages of sketchbooks and illustrated letters are endless drawings of beloved pets, as well as depictions of quirky zoo life, sturdy farm animals, or rare glimpses of Irish or exotic wildlife. Elsewhere, some of these curious creatures have been captured by artists in preparatory watercolors, stencils, and maquettes, revealing insights into the artistic process behind major projects and commissions. So you'll notice in my slides today and in the exhibition that there's quite a lot of Irish. So I'm a Gaeilgeoir myself, and I developed this exhibition as a bilingual show, with the Irish language having a central part in the curatorial concept. So as you'll hopefully discover, or maybe you are well aware already, the Irish language holds remarkable and perhaps surprising insights into our connections with the animal world. Irish is a rich, imaginative and highly visual language that lends itself to exploring art and visual culture. Where one word suffices in English, seemingly endless variations exist in Irish. We can see this illustrated here in what is just a small selection of words for animal as Gaeilge, which you can find online on the folklore tanglin.ie. And this idea will, of course, be very familiar to those of you as well who have read Manchán Magen's 32 Words for Field. So if we look at these words, we can see layers of history, wisdom, and folk memory expressed in these evocative Irish words for animals, such as bearhor, tail-chewing animal, clúsacháin, long-eared animal, sketchoke, easily startled animal, crearhor, animal sure-footed on boggy ground, and moholacán, thick-coated animal, just to point out just a few. We also get an insight into the humorous and descriptive qualities of the language in some of these words which may or may not be familiar as well, such as smuglerone, jellyfish, gráinneog trá, sea urchin, Mochtira wolf, and Scián Lathair bat. And of course, they all have their own literal translations of beach hedgehog and son of the land. And these very descriptive visual words conjured up by the language. So these familiar and forgotten Irish words reveal a playful, sensitive, and keenly observant relationship with living creatures, one that reflects the curiosity and delight in depicting the animal world that we repeatedly encounter in artists' archives. So the exhibition also explores the wisdom, humour, and animal imagery found in Shanachal, traditional proverbs with their origins in the Irish oral tradition. So while the exhibition explores 8 different themes, from zoo animals to insects, dogs, cats, and wildlife, you'll find in the exhibition that each of these themes is introduced by an Irish Shanachal. We have a selection of them here. Ahnin Kiro Kirog Ella, It Takes One to Know One, Istrom Kiargawad, Heavy as a Hen Over a Long Distance, and one that was new for me, Currach She Orhus or Valhoon, It Would Sicken a Bear. So now that I've introduced the exhibition concept, let's take a closer look at the artists and artworks represented in the exhibition. But I suppose before we begin, I want to remind viewers that this exhibition comprises 4 specially curated rotations of material from the archives, each rotation lasting approximately 4 months. So we swap out material regularly in room 11 in this way in order to protect our fragile works on paper and also to showcase as much as possible of our collections. I do want to note that because there are so many amazing archives to explore in this talk, not everything I discussed today is actually on display on Thursday. So some items will be in later rotations of the exhibition. Most of the items I'm discussing today are on display in the first rotation, but there are some items that will come on display in later rotations. So I suppose what I would suggest, therefore, are repeat visits to this exhibition. So if you've come in to see the first rotation, in the coming weeks, do return and have a look in the rest of the year. You'll find a lot of interesting things and changing objects on display as the exhibition progresses. So this is an archival exhibition, I'm starting with illustrated letters, which are very prevalent in our archival collections. So first up, we have William Orpin, who I think many of us will be very familiar with. He was an artist who illustrated many of our letters, and the CSA holds a very large and really fascinating collection of his illustrated letters, which really show off his quirky and I would think slightly self-absorbed, but certainly very witty personality. So Orpin was born in Stillorgan, but he established his career as a very famous and extraordinarily successful society portrait painter in London. At one point in his career, he was earning the equivalent of $500,000 a year. So at that time, in the early 20th century, it was actually very possible to earn a very, very handsome living as an artist, particularly if you're working in portraiture. During the period 1902 to 1914, Orpin taught part-time at the Dublin Metropolitan School of Art. He frequently wrote home to his family in England, illustrating his letters with humorous sketches of his life in the city. His more imaginative and unusual drawings were affectionately addressed to his daughters Mary, who was known as Bunny, and Christine, who was known as Kit. So here he opens his 2-page letter. My dearest wife, this is a picture of a snail for Bunny and this one of a slug for Kit. He goes on to discuss pretty mundane topics such as tax concerns, a portrait commission, and playing tennis at the Fitzwilliam Club. There is no explanation for the presence of these 2 beautifully drawn mollusks. So they would seem to be simply a warm fatherly gesture and a means of including his daughters in his day-to-day correspondence with his wife. And you'll notice in the archives that illustrated letters are often directed at children. This one here was written by Thomas Bodkin, who was director of the National Gallery of Ireland from 1927 to 1935. It was written to his niece, Nora Robinson. So Bodkin was an art historian, an art critic, and a patron to significant artists in Ireland, such as Harry Clarke, and he was also a keen watercolorist himself. In this letter, Bodkin vividly describes several outlandish encounters with the animal world to his young niece. He writes here, my dear Nora, I'm dreadful, awful busy, so this is not a very long letter. Queer things have happened since I saw you last. Here are pictures of the 2 queerest. These 2 elephants went strolling gaily down the street past my office. There was no one in charge of them. They looked into all the shop windows as they went by. I don't know whether yellow and purple was their real colour. Perhaps they were only painted that way. When I was done dinner the other night, I went out into the garden. It wasn't dark yet. This is what I saw on the wall. Did you ever see such a thing in all your life? And he signs off, your loving old Uncle Tom. It's a very sweet, affectionate letter, and it's clear that he put some effort and time into drawing these beautifully coloured watercolours illustrations for his niece, Nora. Some letters also offer valuable insights into the artistic process. So this letter by Walter Osborne was written during a painting trip in Worcestershire, England, in 1884, when the artist was 25 years of age. In the letter, he tells his father that he is pretty far advanced on a Kit Kat of a girl feeding foal. This painting, entitled Feeding the Chickens, which of course is not in the exhibition, it's considered a major work by the artist. I believe it's in private collection. In his letter, Osborne admits to some difficulties, particularly with the rendering of the chickens, which are very troublesome apparently. And these would require more preparatory sketches before he painted them. So while the painting was at this stage still a work in progress, the delicately realized drawing that he includes in his letter indicates that he has nevertheless worked out most of the detail of the finished composition. Rendered in short and controlled vertical pencil strokes, his technique for the rapid sketch reflects the square brush painting style that was popular among realist painters at the time. So you can really see the similarities of his sketch on the left in his letter and the finished artwork. He's obviously made some changes. He's removed the figure on the bench in the background, but even the positioning of the chickens is very close to the final artwork. Next up, we have Barry Cook discussing his collaboration with the poet Ted Hughes on the Great Irish Pike. The natural world was a central theme in Cook's expressionist painting. In his personal life, he was a keen fisherman and often combined his pursuit of artistic inspiration with good fishing opportunities on trips to Mexico, South Africa, New Zealand, Alaska, and Cuba. Cook's enthusiasm for fishing was shared by the poets Seamus Heaney and Ted Hughes, both of whom regularly joined Cook to fish in various rivers around Ireland. The painter and the poets were known to collaborate and to inspire each other, with Cook said to have produced over 100 paintings, prints, and drawings in response to his friends' literary works. Amongst these is a series of illustrations for Heaney's Bog Poems, published in 1975, as well as a series of lithographs for Hughes' The Great Irish Pike, published in 1982. In this letter to the American critic, art collector, and poet Jack Sweeney, and his wife, the Irish academic and folklorist Moira MacNeill, Cook writes about the Great Irish Pike collaboration with Hughes. He writes, it is a wonderful poem and I think a strong set of lithographs. Ted found a superb master printer living in Devon, so I did them over there. I drew and then Ted wrote lines on each plate. If this proves successful, perhaps we'll do a great Irish pike, a great Irish elk. Included in his correspondence is a simple pencil sketch in which he captures the Irish pike in profile. Inscribed beneath, Cook writes, Pike study for the set of Hughes Cook lithographs, 1982, the seed for which was sown by Jack and Moira in 1958, with love from Barry. This note suggests a new narrative thread to the Cook-Hughes collaboration, revealing a significant role for the Sweeneys in the project's early conception as far back as 1958. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, pets are a recurring feature of artists' archives. The photo on the right from the Yeats archive, which is not in the exhibition, shows Hooligan the dog on the windowsill of the Yeats family home, Cashlauna Shelmader Snail's Castle in Devon, with Jack working nearby. So we have an extraordinary collection in the Yeats archive, which was donated by Anne Yeats, Jackie Yeats's niece, in 1996. And this exhibition focuses on, Jack's sketches. But I just thought this was a wonderful photograph to show Hooligan's place in the family home in Snail's Castle. So Yeats's sketchbooks are a bit like any pet lover's camera roll, I think, with sketch after sketch of his dog Hooligan, or Hooli as he was known, sleeping and playing. So you see these lovely, sweet sketches on the right here with Hooli asleep with his ear kind of propped up on the right, and then licking his paw in the center. And he also, I suppose, to show an insight into Jack's perhaps obsession or devotion to Hooligan, he even developed what was an unfinished alphabet illustrated with Hooli getting up to all sorts of mischief. So we have P here illustrated by Hooligan, the pointer, acting in a pointed manner when someone else is having breakfast. So I think that's probably Jack's wife, Cotty, in having breakfast in bed, and Hooligan is very eager to join her for breakfast. And the sketchbook is filled with illustrations for each letter. He hadn't actually completed it. Not every letter has been finished with sketches of Hooligan, but a lot of them have been, and they all are very kind of funny and, again, a great insight into Jack's personality. In our Yeats archive, we hold over 200 of these small pocket-sized sketchbooks, which Jack carried with him everywhere in order to document the world around him. These sketchbooks played a major role in his artistic process, as he would refer back to them for inspiration, often decades later. But in addition to being rich sources of artistic inspiration, Jack's sketchbooks are like a visual diary that offers us a close insight into his daily life and hobbies, which of course included model boats and attending fairs and circuses. And a sense of mischief and humorous observation is so clear in these sketches as well. So you see, for example, on the lower right corner, we have young ducks watching my paper boat. So almost like little ducklings observing Jack's paper boat as it floats down the river. Jack was really interested in model boats, and we have a whole range of material relating to this hobby in the Yeats archive. Model boats and also toy theatres. So he had quite interesting hobbies. And you see above that, the long-haired horse, which is one of many, many sketches of horses, circus horses, created by Jack. So a lot of them might be horses kind of tied up outside the circus, along with kind of circus workers, and maybe the tent in the background, the typical kind of circus scene you might associate with Jack. But I thought this one was quite funny, the long-haired horse. And then I love also the sketch of the hen in the center, Alice through the looking glass. So he's done a quick watercolor sketch of a hen kind of looking through maybe a pane of glass or a window, and the hen has become kind of fascinated by his or her reflection in the glass. And then Hooligan again on the left with maybe a pair of spiders hitching a lift perhaps. So our next artist, another dog lover, was Stephen McKenna. So Stephen McKenna distinguished himself in Ireland and internationally for his postmodern figurative paintings. The Irish-born artist had family collections in Donegal and Tyrone and was well-travelled, living in Belgium, Germany, Italy and Ireland. He had a particular taste for old masters paintings in the European art history and classical antiquity. And his practice is informed by Western mythology also. So he was exploring the contemporary potential of these traditional genres in his still lifes, landscapes, cityscapes, and paintings of animals. While living in County Carlow, he began painting the riverbanks and towpaths of the River Barrow near his home. His paintings on the subject can be considered perhaps a tribute to the constable and an exercise in avoiding the pastoral in a pastoral pace. In 2006, McKenna collaborated with his friend, the Spanish poet Maria Vela, to publish a limited edition illustrated book entitled Du Côté de Bran. The book is bilingual, translated from Spanish to English by Jonathan Brennan. And it's actually a really wonderful example of excellent translation, which I think is so important, especially when you think of an exhibition like this, which is bilingual. So the English is just as beautiful and poetic. The prose is just as beautiful and poetic in English as I imagine the original Spanish would have been or would be. The book is a mythologizing ode to McKenna's gentle wolfhound Bran, but also a celebration of Stephen's practice as a painter and of their friendship, the friendship between Maria and Stephen. So Maria Vella's lyrical prose conjures the dog and the artist shared universe. I'll actually go back for a minute there. Chasing butterflies and inspiration along the towpaths of the Barrow. In a series of luminous watercolors created for the book, McKenna captures Bran's friendly-faced majesty, as well as the various birds, butterflies, cattle, and wild animals that animate their intersecting worlds. There is an immediacy and honesty in his drawings, yet also a sense of the classical restraint and formal beauty that is typical of Stephen McKenna's work. So I just wanted to read out some quotes from the book because I just think it's really beautifully written as well alongside the artworks. So Bran is an Irish wolfhound, 4 years of age. Stretched out, he looks like a grey camping blanket, rough and drab. His paws are knotted like the tassels of a heavy curtain, and his beard is a mass of tangled wool. He sleeps with the conviction of a hound, the condescension of a wolf, and with the proud timidity of the painter's model. And here is Bran enjoying the towpaths of the Barrow. And the illustrations that accompany the book really, they complement the prose and the ideas that are explored in the book really beautifully. I love the one of the drawing of the butterflies and Maria Vella's writing, "Is it because butterflies are dogs' thoughts?" And the idea of there exists a brotherhood among animals as there exists one among artists. At night, they gather by the river. So it's a really beautiful book. It's a beautiful object in its own right. The writing is really beautiful alongside the illustrations, and we are very lucky to have the original watercolors that McKenna produced for this project with Maria Vella in the archive. And so there's a selection of these watercolors will be on display across the different rotations of the exhibition. So next up we have Norma Guinness, sorry, not Norma Guinness, Nancy Wynne-Jones. Nancy Wynne-Jones was a Welsh landscape artist who married the Irish sculptor Conor Fallon, who of course also features in the exhibition, and I'll get to him in due course. So pet portraits are a recurring feature of her archive, ranging from endearing childhood sketches to vibrant and boldly expressed Conte drawings like the cat in the armchair here on the left. Her painting Moth the Cat dates from 1959, 2 years after she moved to St. Ives in Cornwall. There she trained under Peter Lanyon, who encouraged artists to free themselves from established conventions of perception and to work in an abstract expressionist mode that encompassed multiple viewpoints in a single painting. Lanyon's influence can certainly be seen in this picture of Moth the Cat, which pulsates with a wild, inhuman energy. Moth's glowing yellow eyes are the focal point of the frenetic composition. His triangular ears and mustachioed whiskers offer further cardinal points to navigate the painting. The visceral feeling of space created by Wynne-Jones has a destabilizing effect on the viewer, reminding us that the cat's world is his own, and we can never fully penetrate it. Now, many artists' archives include records of zoo visits, including, of course, Jack's humorous giraffe eating biscuits here on the right, crouching down, stretching his legs out to eat biscuits. And there's also a series of rapid gestural graphite drawings by Barry Cook on display in the exhibition. And I also wanted to point out that there are some really absolutely gorgeous zoo sketches by William Osborne currently on view in the exhibition, The Artist's Presence, in the print gallery. But I particularly wanted to focus on a series of sketches. Here's Barry Cook. His drawing of a lion here. But I particularly wanted to focus on Anne Yates. So Anne Yates was, of course, the daughter of W.B. Yeats, and it was Anne Yates who donated the original Jack B. Yeats archive to the gallery in 1996. She was celebrated, as many of you may remember, in recent years of the gallery with the exhibition Anne Yates, The Everyday Fantastic. Anne and her mother, Georgie, were regular visitors to Dublin Zoo, where they would feed animals while Yeats filled numerous sketchbooks with lively annotated drawings, such as the ones we see here on screen. Her zoo animals often exhibit curiously human behaviors and emotions. Like her Uncle Jack, we see Anne's humorous observation and sense of the absurd captured in animated scenes of a bear washing himself, or being chased by a honking goose, which we can see on the left. Yeats developed her zoo sketches into a colourful mural commission for the Unicorn Restaurant in Dublin in 1946. You can see a preparatory sketch for that on the left, although that one is not in, these two works are not in the exhibition. She also likely drew from her zoo sketches to illustrate the children's book, The Animal's Breakfast, in 1950 by Brian Guinness. Now, next up, I wanted to discuss the archives of 3 sculptors. These are recent acquisitions to the CSIA collections, really interesting archival collections joining the Centre for the Study of Irish Art. So you hopefully are familiar with these artists. Deborah Brown was a Northern Irish sculptor, best known for her Sheep on the Road sculpture in Belfast. Oisin Kelly is an artist that if you're not familiar with his name, you're definitely familiar with his artwork, because he created the Jim Larkin sculpture on O'Connell Street and the Children of Lear pictured here at the Garden of Remembrance in Parnell Square. And then we also have Conor Fallon, the husband of Nancy Wynne-Jones, who I discussed a few moments ago. And Fallon was one of the country's best known sculptors of animals, whose pieces can be found in multiple locations around Ireland, including UCD campus. So Deborah Brown was a Belfast-born artist who studied at NCAD in Dublin and in Paris. She was influenced by her time in Paris, and particularly by the American abstract expressionists. And she first established her reputation in abstract painting before moving into 3D works in collage and fiberglass. Later in her career, she began exploring working with wire and paper mache, enjoying the flexibility of the material, which permitted flexibility and spontaneity. Her animal sculptures are usually created from wire, delicately clad in paper mache, investigating the importance of shape and texture with the materiality of the object. Although she considered her paper mache works, such as the Goat 2 here pictured, as completed works in their own right, she also came to accept that these beautifully crafted objects created from ephemeral materials had inherently impractical limitations, and she was obliged to convert the fragility of these objects into a more permanent form in bronze. The first of the bronzes were nearly all farm animals: goats, sheep, cows. She apparently became friends with some local animals, notably Johan, the vet's goat at Cushendens in Antrim, who had superb horns and terrified visitors, apparently, although he only followed them because he was looking for sweets. Johan was a 3rd bronze, the first being experimental small-scale sheep and then life-size sheep. So it's a large, I'm sorry for the poor photograph here. I really would have to travel up to see him, I think, to get a better photograph. There's not good images online. But this is the life-sized Johan. And after this work, she never strayed far from bronze. She was actually very successful at translating the flexible materials of wire, wax, and paper mache into metal, preserving a sense of delicate form and suggestive spaces, hollows, and piercings, and the almost honeycombing effect on the surface of these ephemeral materials into this heavy, solid medium of bronze. So whether working in abstract painting and papier-mâché animals, a mood of calmness and peace are prime qualities of Deborah Brown's work. Next up, we have Oisin Kelly, who during his 30-year career as a sculptor worked in wood, stone, pottery, cast iron, cement, and other media. In 1964, the sculptor was offered a part-time position at the Kilkenny Design Workshops. This organisation was established in 1963 with the goal of improving the general quality of Irish design. His contract stipulated that he would work in Kilkenny Design Workshops for 2 days a week on a salary of £800 per annum. He was originally appointed design coordinator, but his role seems to have been closer to an artist in residence. He relished the opportunity to explore various craft processes at the recently established workshops, including metalwork, textiles, and pottery. His series of ceramic ducks proved particularly popular when they were sold at the Kilkenny Design Shop on Nassau Street. These were relatively affordable stoneware pieces cast from Kelly's original model and then hand-painted by Mary Hennessy. The Eder sea duck, the wood duck, and the mallard duck, which you see here, each have their own endearing qualities and distinct personalities, and you'll see them much better on displayed in room 11 in the gallery. Oisin had a great interest in the Irish language. He was actually born Austin Kelly, but he used the Irish version of his name throughout his life. And at Kilkenny Design Workshops, he designed these wonderful linen dishcloths. Again, these are not in the exhibition. I would love to see examples in real life. I struggle to find good images of them online, but it's a really fascinating series of designs that just happen to tie in really well with what's going on in this exhibition in terms of the use of the seanchail. Because of course these are based on the Irish proverbs Anin Kirog Kirog Ella, and you've got the cat with the text all through his fur. Is era hon fein again in on cot cronon. It's for his own sake that the cat is purring. So these were dishcloth designs by Oisin Kelly, again sold as part of the Kilkenny Design Workshops. So very affordable, and I'm sure there are copies around the place, but I haven't managed to see any in real life myself so far. Oisin Kelly's first commissions were mostly for churches, but he also completed smaller works for sale and exhibition. The latter part of his career was dominated by major public commissions, such as the ones I mentioned of Jim Larkin and the Children of Lear. In the archive, we have records of his preparatory sketches, notes, watercolours and maquettes for some of these larger commissions, including this wonderful grasshopper, which was apparently commissioned for St. Mary's Primary School at Strahan, County Tyrone in 1972. I contacted the school. This work is not coming up until I think perhaps the third rotation, but it's just a very interesting kind of insight into the kind of archival material we get from these donated family archive collections. And so I need to do further research before it goes on display, but the watercolor and sketches go on display. But I did contact the school, and while the work does not seem to be in situ anymore, I was told that locals remember it well, and it was a popular climbing frame for children back in the day. So I think the photograph in the lower right is probably a photograph of either the finished artwork or maybe a smaller version of the finished artwork. It's hard to get a sense of the scale from the photograph. And then our third sculptor here is Conor Fallon. So Conor Fallon's elegant sculptures possess a lightness and energy that belies the solidity of his chosen medium of bronze or steel. So you've got a photograph of the hawk sculpture on your right. Again, that is not in the exhibition. The archival material from the Conor Fallon archive is in the exhibition. This hawk here will be going on display in a later rotation, but I thought it was a great example of showcasing Conor Fallon's artistic process. He grew up in a family farm in Wexford, where he became captivated by the mystery and secrecy of the wildlife around him. He worked in a cubist idiom, beginning with closely observed preliminary sketches. The sculptor systematically distilled and abstracted his animal subjects to arrive at their most elementary form. Drawing on these preparatory investigations, Fallon would construct a three-dimensional maquette from simple card or paper and staples, which formed the basis for his sculptures in metal. His process of distilling form and movement to the most essential has a surprising effect of capturing the particular behaviors and characteristics distinct to each creature, from the slight absurdity of the rooster to the fiercely elusive hawk. A quote from Conor Fallon here gives us a great insight into his process. He says, I quote, "I work from what has moved me or seemed especially significant in my everyday world. Something visual has struck some response at the edge of my mind that suggests a great opening out into other dimensions and excites and exhilarates with its feeling of space. I try to hold on to the first image in some way, but it will be modified and changed several times in the process of making the sculpture, and as it takes on its own life. This is the difficult area, particularly for a sculptor, to make this half-seen excitement in the mind into a working, three-dimensional, clear reality." So again, I think this, this material shows, I suppose, the value of artist archives, particularly for the researcher, in terms of understanding the artistic process, understanding how the finished product came to be, the type of research, the level of work that went behind it, the preparatory sketches. I think with Conor Fallon, it often starts out with quite realist sketches and then becomes increasingly simplified, reduced, abstracted. And then he moves into the maquettes, the three-dimensional maquettes with paper and card and just held together with staples. And you'll see that with the hawk here in the center. And you might think that he is looking a bit shabby, but he actually looks much, much better than he did when he first arrived in the archive in a box. So obviously, you know, Conor Fallon had passed away in 2007, and this archive collection came to us just last year. It's an extraordinary collection, the Conor Fallon and Nancy Wynne Jones archive. And the maquettes, I suppose, over the years, they were just sitting in boxes, and you know, they got a bit crumpled, a bit brushed up against other objects. And so, you know, when I took this hawk out of a box, I literally didn't know which way was up. It was really unclear what I was looking at. But thanks to the conservator's work, he's really been resurrected for the exhibition. So as we are the Library and Archives department of the gallery, I have included a number of rare special collection books in the exhibition, including artist books like Basil Rakoczy's On Cage en Liberté, pictured here. I wanted to say a few words about Elizabeth Corbett Yates's brushwork studies of flowers, fruit and animals for teachers and advanced students. So Elizabeth Yates was, of course, one of the famed Yates sisters who, together with Lily Yates and Evelyn Gleeson, established in 1902 the Female Arts and Crafts Collective, Dunemer, which was later known as Cooler Industries. Before doing so, she had already published 4 popular painting manuals between 1896 and 1900. And of course, this one is one of this series. It was actually the second in the series. So Yates was trained in the teachings of the German pedagogue, Friedrich Frebel, who was the inventor of kindergarten. And her broad brush painting is informed by her experience of teaching young children. Her beautiful renderings of birds, butterflies, beads, and flowers enliven her simple step-by-step instructions for painting the natural world. These painting manuals were widely used by teachers and students and generated a good income for Yates and her family. And I wanted to finish with the most recent work in the exhibition, Birds of Paradise from 2004. So this is by the contemporary artist Justin Larkin. It's the only work in the exhibition by a living artist, as most of these objects originate from artist archives generously donated to the Gallery Centre for the Study of Irish Art after the artist has passed. However, we are a library and archives collection, and we also collect artist books. And we happened to pick up this particular volume at the Temple Bar Book Fair last Christmas. So an artist book, as some of you may know, is a work of art in the medium of a book. The primary mode of the artistic expression is in the format, structure, and concept of the book itself. Justin Larkin here is a multidisciplinary artist whose practice considers ideas relating to time, place, narrative, sense, and understanding, as well as themes of nature and technology. His works, like Birds of Paradise, are often imbued with a quiet sense of stillness or emptiness. I spoke with him while researching this exhibition, and he shared this statement from the book, or about the book. Birds of Paradise is a response to a notion I had about birds. Birds losing their natural habitat, in particular, was a starting point. The book draws on the visual language of natural history, wildlife journals, scientific anatomical bird studies, and the curiosity from an age of exploration and discovery. Combining avian topography drawings with romantic, dense jungle landscape imagery alongside digitally rendered elements in vivid and fluorescent colors, the book presents images that feel uncanny, fragmented, and displaced. The suggestion of taxidermied books within the pages also evoke a sense of no longer belonging or existing in the world, while also alluding to the idea of beauty lost when it is captured and contained. Through these visual references and compositions, Birds of Paradise acts as a reflection on the growing divide between nature and its disappearance in the modern world, and as a paradox to the idea that paradise can truly exist. Ultimately, Birds of Paradise aims to visually entice and stimulate curiosity in the viewer while also acting as a playful artifact of contemporary media. So on that note, I wanted to finish by circling back to my introduction and to the interesting parallels that emerge when we think about the preservation of both living or endangered creatures and living or endangered languages. With each passing generation, more Irish words fall into obscurity. This exhibition unleashes a menagerie of hidden animals from both the Irish Art Archives and from the depths of the Irish Dictionary. It reminds us to cherish the lively and descriptive lyricism of our native language. There we may rediscover past ways of understanding and coexisting with our fellow creatures. So thank you very much for your time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Thanks, Mary. Actually, somebody has a question about Conor Fallon's bird. So maybe if you could share again, we can go back and have a look at it.
Yeah,
that would be great. Really interesting talk. And I love that we're showcasing the work of artists that may not get shown in the gallery very often, and then also mixing that in with ones that people are very familiar with. So Helena was commented, she's asking, is the maquette in the center not an owl rather than the finished hawk on the right? And note the different tail and wing feathers. It's true, it is a bit different.
Yes, it's an interesting question. So we don't have, we do believe that the bird, the maquette, is a hawk. The photograph bird is not an exact match, obviously. So it's possible that the maquette was never actually executed as it was, as it's in the current form that he made it here. So what we have in the archive is this hawk, but he may have used that to refine his ideas and create a more, I suppose, structured maquette, which was used for the final piece on the right. So while I don't have the exact maquette for the hawk pictured on the right, it was kind of a close match, but very well observed.
Exactly.
It's I suppose it can be challenging to get an exact kind of sketch and an exact maquette to match the finished object, but what the archive tells is kind of the broader kind of work that goes into these kind of objects. And he did multiple versions of hawks. A lot of them are actually kind of, rather than kind of looking downwards, a lot of them are kind of looking upwards. So a lot of different versions and poses. This was the closest I could see to our own maquette here in our collections. But you know, there may be it's possible that there is a finished piece that is an exact match to our maquette. I haven't discovered it yet, but
yeah, it's
keep
pretty
my
close.
eyes open.
Yes, absolutely. Somebody is saying what a wonderful selection of animals in art, and thank you for sharing your thoughts today. They're just wondering approximately when the changeovers will take place within the exhibition.
Great question. So each rotation lasts 4 months. I don't have approximately 4 months. So what I would suggest is to keep an eye on social media channels and newsletters for the gallery, because when we are doing a changeover, once the new rotations are going on display, that will be advertised, and we'll get the word out on our kind of social media channels and on newsletters. So that would be the best place to find out when that changeover takes place.
Right.
Approximately 4 months. Yeah.
Well, this person is saying thank you very much. And it is really nice because it's like going to see a totally different exhibition. Although the sort of the shell of the exhibition is the same, the walls will look the same, the cases will have completely different works in them.
Exactly,
so you can
yes.
see, you know, up to 4 shows in one, which is lovely.
It is, yeah.
Anna is saying it was a fantastic talk and it was so fascinating. And what was your favorite seanchail that you came across during your research?
Oh, that's a great question. My favorite seanchail. Well, I think I have to say I think it has to be a Strom Cearcha Wad, the heaviest the hen over a long distance. I think that maybe it's because it's one I'm familiar with as a child. I think it's just one that, yeah, it's my favorite.
I've never heard that before.
There's a lot. I'll circle back to the seanchails.
Yes.
A lot of, where are we now? I actually do love the ones about the cat as well, Siúl an Chothaig and Bushy and the cat walking like the kitten walking like the cat. I think that one's very sweet as well.
Yes.
But they're just quite funny, and I suppose what's interesting as well is you don't always have direct translations in Irish or the equivalent or in English, and the equivalent in English can be completely different in terms of kind of the animals referenced, or you have
Yes,
birds of a feather, which might be Annie, Kiro Gala. So yeah,
exactly.
it's
Very
interesting
different
one.
animals. The meaning remains the same or
Exactly.
similar. Um, Fascinating talk. I was thinking, oh God, I have to edit the subtitles for for this, but that's fine. So if anyone is watching this on YouTube in the recording, please accept my apologies. I don't think I can put VODAs into my system, but I'll do my very best. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. So it opens on Thursday, but tomorrow you're going to be doing a talk with my colleague Caoimhín McAnumra, the same talk that you've given today, Oscailga. So anyone who wants to practice their Irish, it'll be live tomorrow, but it'll also be on our YouTube page. So looking forward to that. We've got lots of tours set up for this. You can find information about that on our website. We've lovely family workshops. I was just looking at them. So for September, we've got baby sensory workshops, and we have Karen Peakin is an artist that we work with. She's doing an online family workshop and an in-person one on Sunday, the 14th of September, and that's under the theme Cardboard Zoo. So that sounds like it should be really nice. Looking forward to that. And so, Mary, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for all of that information today. I can't wait to see the exhibition in real life. Very excited. Margaret, thank you to you for all of your interpretation work. She is tirelessly translating there. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today and indeed on our recording. Have a lovely
Thanks,
afternoon.
Joanne.
Thank you. Bye.